Okay. So what you're going to need to do now is draw an actual space that shows deep space in single point perspective. So you're going to have to find something, a long hallway somewhere where you're not endangering others. I have long hallways in my house, but there's not a lot of information in them. I mean, it's just walls and a ceiling pretty much. So if an apartment building or something like that, probably better. You want to have something on the walls and something on the ceiling and something on the floor would be great. But a deep hallway is what you're looking for. Now, I'm looking at this hallway in the AMP building, and the main thing about this drawing is that we're going to try to show the illusion of space. So we're going to start off by drawing the back wall that's right in front of me. And before I do that, though, I'm going to want to measure how big that back wall is, because the back wall isn't very large, right? Because it's far away from me, it's a lot smaller. So we're going to make it either actual size or slightly smaller than it really is, okay? To make sure that we get all the space, because the drawing is going to be about the space, not about the back wall. If we make the back wall too big, then we don't get enough space, okay? All right, so the first impulse you're going to have is that you're going to want to put the back wall way up here. But you have to ask yourself, your eye level, where's your eye level at in relation to the room? And your eye level is closer to the floor than it is to the ceiling, okay? Which means if your eye level is closer to the floor than it is to the ceiling, you should see more ceiling than you do floor. So since we want to see a lot of ceiling, we want to move the back wall not here, but we want to have it down here. So you have to kind of imagine an imaginary dividing line in your paper, okay? So I moved all the way by magic at the other end of the hallway so you can see where my eye level is. So my eye level, remember, is like a plane of glass that extends all the way over. So you can see where my eye level is in relation to the back wall. It's going to be the same no matter what end I'm on. The eye level doesn't change. Eye level stays the same as long as I'm sitting on this thing. If I was standing, it would be different. If I was sitting on the floor, it would be different. If I was standing, I would be seeing more of the floor, less of the ceiling. And if I was sitting on the floor, I'd be seeing a lot more of the ceiling, less of the floor. Okay. So I'm going to just start off with the rectangle that I have. And I'm going to draw this in red ink because these are going to be guidelines. And I'm using just, I'm not using a ruler or anything. I'm drawing this freehand. So this is going to be my back wall space. And I have the door here. There's a little bit of a space here. This is a sketch. This is going to be a 2-scale sketch. It's going to be the exact same size as the drawing that we do. So you can see what the example drawings look like on canvas. Those are what we would call the mechanical line quality drawings. So those drawings are after you've done this, you then do that. So why you're doing this is because you need to figure out where your eye level is, where your vanishing point is, and the only way you can do that is by drawing it. So many times I have students that, I set them in a location at school, and I walk away, and I come back and they're still there and they haven't drawn anything. And the reason they haven't drawn anything is because they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on in front of them. And you can't figure that out until you actually start putting something down on the paper. Just like we did with the photo diagram. This needs to be a little bit bigger. Just like we did with the photo diagram, you have to have the image on the paper. We had a photograph before, so we were able easily to figure out where the eye level was and the vanishing points. Here we kind of have to find them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to sight along a vertical, okay? And we are going to see what the angle looks like. This top wall space needs to be a little bit bigger. So I need to have that vertical as a reference. So I'm using that vertical, and I'm holding up my stick like that on the corner, and I'm sighting on that angle. And when I do that, I see that this angle is pretty extreme. Maybe not quite that extreme. Something like that. And then this one, not as extreme as that one. Now on this side, I've got there's a little hallway here. So that means that the wall is lining up on this back wall space here. So there's this little, I don't know what the word is for that. We need to ask the interior design instructor what that's called. So anyway, we're sighting on that angle, and when we do that, we see this angle something like this. These angles are going to be adjusted at some point. Okay, now I'm going to get the bottom one here. So there's that space, and then corner, because remember there's this little hallway here, so the back wall's there, and there's this little corner here. Now I want to know how far to make that. So I'm going to measure again with my stick to see how far away this is, and that's a good spot right there. So now sighting on that angle, seeing something like this. Like I said, these are going to adjust slightly. So first, I have to kind of imagine where my eye level is going to be. And here I have, so these should converge, right, at my eye level. Let's see if they do. And again, you know what? They actually do on that side. So this looks good as far as the vanishing point goes. Maybe it comes over here a little bit more. And so that might, I'm going to draw from that point to the corner and then work out. Corner and then out. So like I said, it does adjust the line a little bit. On this side, we're going to the corner here first. The corner there. So that changes that one slightly. Let's see what it does to this. Yeah, okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to start to darken this with the black pen, because these are the actual lines that I'm going to be seeing. And you, when you're doing this drawing, are not going to be using ballpoint pen. I'm just doing this so it's easy to see. Door should be skinnier. This should be wider. You want to make sure your vanishing point is real easy to find. Okay, now, this corner we decided was in a good spot, so this is going to be the little hallway thing. And this extends this way. So all these little details, these are the things that you're figuring out with the sketch. Now, if this were normal times, what I would be doing is I'd be coming around and checking on you, making sure everything was okay. And the purpose of the sketch is so that we can correct things and find what's wrong, okay, what it is we're missing. So I don't have anything going on this wall until I come to this corner right in front of me. So that happens at about this spot. It's a lot closer than I would think, okay? And the top part, let's use a guideline, is going to line up with that line that I did for this. So this is going to continue up, and then I have the corner here coming down like that. So this is wall. Here's the molding on the wall. I'm going to shade it so you can see it, but I don't want you shading anything in the drawing because it just makes a mess. So there, and then it's going to come, this is actual structure here. this comes in like this and like this. I'm going to measure to see how far in to make that, something like that. So that lines up at the vanishing point on that side, and then over again on here. So there's our molding turning around, and then it's going to come down like that. And then within that, there's a little window. Normally I'd be further back in this hallway so that I can see more of it. So this is right about eye level, so that's going to be straight. This is the bottom of the window. And then it's going to do something like that to the vanishing point. And then there's a frame on the window. And then it comes in. And I don't see too much of that bottom surface because that, like I said, is right about on my eye level. So this is this side of the wall. On this wall, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. There's some pictures, and they start at about here. Posters, I reckon. Maybe a little higher than that. And about there. So some posters on that side. Now, for the ceiling tiles, for the sketch, we just need to make sure that we look at how many we have across. So we have 1, 2, 3 across, 3 squares, and then we have 2 little skinny things, okay? So I can mark that out here and just kind of eyeball this. So there's the 2 little skinny ones. Then we have 3 squares. So that's going to be like that. So using my guideline again. That's going to be my tiles coming out at me, okay? Now for the sketch, again, we're just going to sort of eyeball the coming across part, and just remember that as they come towards us, they're going to start to get wider, right? But they're never going to get to be rectangles. They're always going to be what we would call foreshortened squares. So when we get to do the mechanical line quality drawing, not the sketch. You can see how these get wide as they come to us. We're going to do this the same way we did the tiles in the mechanical interior. Remember that? Where we did the diagonal to figure out the tiles? Yes, you're nodding your heads, yes. They sense it through the computer. So there's our tiles coming out at us. And we're looking now at the center part. So we have very far back here, we have an ellipse within that. And then we have a bigger ellipse, 1, 2 squares up maybe. So that's the ellipse. Remember, your circle is going to relate to a square. So you have to have your square. And then it skips a tile, and then there's another little one. To get the little ones, you want to have guidelines, right? So you want to use the vanishing point. You want to go the outside edges. And then all the little ones should fit within those, right? So as you get closer, not very well centered. Let's say we had one of these little ones here, it's going to be a lot bigger, right, as we get closer to where we're at. And then we have the larger ones here, same thing. You'd want to get guidelines for those, but right now we're just going to kind of fake it, okay, because it's a sketch. We don't have to be that detailed with it. I do notice that we've got up at the top here, we've got a tile that's shaded, and then there's an ellipse within. This one's higher up than this. It's not centered because it's on a part that's higher up, which I can't really see. I'm assuming that something is happening like this, where it's coming straight up, and there's an edge in here. And then it's within that. But again, we're just kind of figuring that out. So the same thing with if we had tiles on the floor. Now I started to say, when we do the mechanical one, right, what we do is we measure, you can measure out your tiles, get them evenly spaced wherever. It doesn't matter where you're doing that. So if you had a spot, if you had 3 tiles across like what we have here, you'd find a spot that was going to be either 3 inches or 6 inches long with your ruler. And then you would mark out where those needed to be. You know, if it was like 6 inches, then that would mean every square would have to be 2 inches, right? So you measure that out, and then you draw your orthogonals to the vanishing point that you've established, right? Then you do your first row of tiles at the top, not at the bottom. So that place where you figured out the spacing, you erase that. You don't need it anymore. But when we come over here, you do your first row of tiles, and we should make these look square. They're not looking square. So let's say this is our first row of tiles, right? Then you're doing your diagonal like we talked about from corner to corner, right? And that way you figure out every time it passes through the orthogonal, that tells you where to put the next one and the next one, okay? So just like we did in the mechanical interior, so you refer back to that. So the sketch doesn't have to be any more developed than this. It just needs to be enough to get you going on the actual drawing, right? But the thing you need to remember is placing the back wall lower than where you think it needs to be. It doesn't need to be up here, it needs to be there because we need to see more of this than we do of this, and making sure that it's actually smaller than the wall that we're looking at. And I think mine makes it a little bigger. Let's make that a little bit shorter. That's better. Okay. And then that way you're going to end up with all the space. Okay. There's a table in here too. I forgot that. So we've got a table like this coming straight across. So there's the plane, and then it's coming down from about here and here, I guess, there and there. So there's the edge of the table. And this part would be horizontal. This part would line up as a horizontal. If I could see both, like if I could see this part here, we'd want to have a guideline coming down this way to get that, and then come across from there. All right, so that's your sketch. Get the sketch done, and then it's going to be the mechanical line quality. So the same thing over, but you start off drawing this with a ruler, putting your vanishing point where you figured out where it goes, working your way out from the corners to get your orthogonal lines, and then starting to get, what I would do, after I got the back wall, and I got these edges here, I would then divide up my tiles and do the tiles on the ceiling or tiles on the floor, because tiles help you figure out where everything goes. Like you could count how many tiles it would be to get from here to there, right? Or you could count how many tiles, you know, one of these posters went, if it might be 4 or 6 or whatever. So you can count by coming up and then over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say it's 4 tiles that this needs to be. So coming up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that would be your first set of the edge of your poster there. So the tiles help to space everything. Okay, so there's your sketch. Let's see what we can do, and then we'll go to the mechanical line quality. All right.